So what's it like to photograph in a house from 1680? This home is absolutely amazing. I'm here for a couple of days making some work, and I thought I would share with you how I'm approaching the unique challenges of an environment like this. So what I thought I would do is try to accomplish three goals. Goal number one is I'm going to walk you through the house and just quickly talk about a couple of the rooms, issues that I see that I'm going to need to address. Two, I'm going to show you what cameras I brought, what film I brought, and why. And then three, we're going to do an actual shoot, and I'll show you how I would approach the shot. So as you can see in rooms like this, you have small windows with tons of contrast between the outside and the inside, especially in these dark hearth areas. So I don't use a tripod in my work in a space like this. I like to do multiple second handheld exposures, and controlling that contrast between the outside and the inside is so important. This is one of the reasons that I've been doing so many videos on pole development recently and showing different developers and how they respond to different films. It's because I knew I was coming to this place and I wanted to have all my ducks in a row so I'd be able to get the best possible imagery. So let's walk through here, Eve. And you can just see the contrast range. It's just massive. And then going into these dark areas, like in here, it's really incredible when you see the range of tonality that we're talking about. And photographing in a place like this is a challenge and also super exciting. One of the goals that I set up for myself here was to only use candlelight in the evenings when we make work. Now, obviously, because this is a National Historic Home, we can't use real candles, so I brought some really beautiful flickering LED type candles because they don't want to burn this place down. Or using just fires that are on the hearth to illuminate the scenes. So I'm using no additional light when I'm making work in these rooms, but just look at how magnificent this is. But once again, figuring out how to control the darkness here and balancing it to the windows behind us is so difficult. So let's keep filming it this way. And this is the room that we're going to do a test image in. And I think it's really beautiful and really amazing. And the low ceilings are just absolutely cool. Why don't you walk all the way in and then look backwards. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up for a shot in this window right here with my beautiful model Eve, who's currently cameraman Eve, camera person Eve, and we're going to set up for a shot right here. And I'm going to show you my solution on how to make this a successful shot. But first, let's go take a look at the cameras and what I brought in my bag for the shoot. Okay, so for this trip, I decided to carry all of the cameras that I brought in a 1966 Swiss Army leather bag. I'm a huge fan, by the way, of these leather bags. You can get them on Etsy, eBay. They're just made to last forever, and it carries the gear that I needed in a really compact solution. This stuff is just so well constructed. Now, right now in all of my work, I'm using minox cameras for my current body. And I brought 3 cameras with me. That way I could have 3 different film solutions set up depending upon the light that I was going to encounter. So the 2 films that I brought were Ferrania P30, which I was going to rate at box speed, somewhere between 64 and 80 in one camera. And then in another camera, I would rate Ferrania P30 using the pull test that I've outlined all the way down to somewhere around an EI of 1 to 12. And then in my third minox camera that I brought, I cut down some Tri-X and loaded it up. And that I'll be shooting somewhere between 400 and 800, depending upon the light. Now, last night when I was shooting, it was really dark. I mean, you can't believe how dark these homes become when there's nothing but 1 or 2 candles and a fireplace illuminated. It was so dark. In most of my exposures that I was working with, even with 800 speed film at f3.5, were somewhere in the range of 3 or 4 seconds, and a couple of them went out to a minute. And once again, this was all handheld. But once again, that's very much the aesthetic that I like. So in my bag, the way that I have it set up is I use pouches like this. And so this particular pouch by Portabrace is all of my exposed film when I'm done, and I label everything up. I have another clear bag that has all of my film that I brought to shoot. I always bring 5, 6, 10 times more film than I could ever possibly bring. I mean, I cut down so much film for this trip that it's ridiculous. I could be here for 2 weeks and not shoot this much film. But I've learned through experience that not having enough film is a terrible thing. There have been many times that I've been on a photo shoot out of the Cape or in other locations where I really started running low on film after a couple of days, and then I had to start pulling myself back from the amount of work that I really want to shoot. So always bring double, triple, 10 times more film than you think you need, especially today when it's hard to get really great professional films at locations when you travel. Next, I brought a light meter. Now, I often use the light meter on my phone for most works. However, I really like this particular meter for travel. I bought this years ago. It's just a Sekonic L308, really tiny meter, very accurate. In an environment like this, I'm using it almost exclusively in incident mode. And sometimes I use this, sometimes I use the phone, but for indoors like this, where it's a really controlled environment and I can get right up to my subject, I'll just use an incident light meter for everything. So the 3 cameras that I bought with me, I carry it a certain way. Okay. So I have one minox camera here in the case, and then in this case I have 2 more. So the way that I walk around with my cameras, and this is for everyday use, I always have a camera in my pocket. And so depending on what I'm doing throughout the day or where I'm going to be, I take the camera that has the film loaded for the shutter speeds that I'm going to need and for the film speed that I'm going to need for that environment. So one of these cameras is this one here. This is a 1939 Minox Riga camera. It's one of the very first ones ever made in the 2nd year of production. And this particular camera, I'm shooting ferrania P30 at box speed. Worked really well last night around 5:30, 6 o'clock. After that, this camera wasn't going to work anymore, and I broke out this particular Minox camera. This is a Minox 3. It's not the 3S, it's the 3 because it doesn't have the flash port on the end. This particular camera, I have the Tri-X loaded in, and once again, I was shooting it between 400 and 800. And then in my 3rd Minox camera that I brought with me, this is kind of a really rare one. It's a 3S, but it's kind of a hybrid of the 3S Minoxes and the later B camera. And the reason why is, I'm gonna do a whole video series on Minox cameras, the original spy camera. On the very front here, there's a filter that you can slide. And the original Minoxes had a yellow filter, which was in the Rigas. And then when they got to the 2s and the 3s and the 3Ss, they were a green and an orange filter. But this one here was only made for about a year and a quarter. It was in between when they were going from the 3S to the B that would come up next. And it has a green filter and a 3-stop neutral density filter. So this is the one that I use outdoors on bright sunny days or on a day like today where it's still overcast, because I don't have to pull the film quite as much because I can use that 3-stop ND to help get my shutter speeds for what I need when I'm out traveling. And that's what I have in my bag. That and maybe a little bit of promotional material to hand out, which I've been doing shamelessly. So carrying 3 cameras like this or multiple camera backs or whatever, and really using the camera in the back for the light of the room and the shot that you're going for is really important. Also, ferrania P30, as you've seen in the countless videos that I've done, looks very different than 400 TX cut down to the size. And so I'm also thinking about, like there were some shots last night that I could shoot at the ferrania P30 at box speed, and I also could shoot at the Tri-X at say 250 to 400, and the shutter speeds were maybe like 2 seconds versus 6 seconds, so not that much of a difference handheld. Yet they're going to look completely different visually because one obviously is going to have more grain, one's going to have finer grain. And so in a lot of cases, when I hit a scenario like that, I'll shoot both cameras for a few frames just so I have the options later when I get back to my studio. So now what I'd like to do is take you into the other room that I just showed you a few minutes ago and show you the one secret piece of equipment that I almost always travel with when I know I'm going to be photographing in an environment like this. I've had it for well over 30 years. So let's go in the other room, we'll set it for the shot, and I'll show you that tool. One thing that really amazes me about this place, and Eve just pointed this out to me, this house is 142 years older than the invention of photography itself. That's crazy. All right, so here's the shot that we're gonna take. My beautiful daughter Greta has offered to assist in the shot like she did last night.
What's with the air quotes? Assist.
Assist. Okay, and my amazing wife Eve is going to be the model as always. And so in a scene like this, when I'm metering, I'm gonna pull out my incident light meter, and I wanna do a reading that takes into account the window, but because I'm trying to control that contrast. I also want to make sure that I'm getting the exposure for the inside of the room. Once again, this is why I've been doing all these pull tests in order to be able to find developer film combinations that'll control the highlights coming in from the windows to the degree that I want and still give me some of the room inside. So when I would do a meter reading like this, I'd be careful not to put the incident meter directly in front of her. I would have it somewhere more like this. So it's kind of favoring both a little bit. I would take a light meter reading, and at ISO, see here, at ISO 80, this would be, in this light, f3.5 at an eighth of a second. Now, last night, when I was doing this shot, this is a recreation of a historical photograph that took place yesterday. It was much later in the day. It was 3 to 4 hours later, and the exposure was somewhere around f3.5 at box speed of 80 at like 6 seconds. So the light is really going to go down. So I'm going to use my Minox Ricoh camera to set up for the shot. But here's the secret tip for making shots like this work, and why this tip is so important, this tool is so important, is that historic places like this really frown, in most cases, upon you coming in with hot lights. Anything that can burn a place down, they don't like. And they don't like to see you come in with tons of equipment as well, because they're worried about the environment being protected. So I always carry a reflector that can pop out like this. And it has a silver side and it has a white side, depending upon the quality of light that I'm looking for. So now if we're looking at Eve right now, you can see there's a fair amount of deep shadow right here. But by just bringing the reflector up, look at how I'm able to open those shadows up in a really controlled way. So last night, Greta, would you take the reflector? I'd be back here. Greta, get a little closer, move down a little bit. Right there. Aim it a little bit more towards her backside. A little less. Right there. And you can see how wonderful that looks. Now, on my camera, all I would have to do on the Minox Ricoh is set my distance, lock in, and take an exposure. So it'd be something like this. Look at Evie right there. Look at me. Now, one thing that I'm really interested in the shot, and I was last night, was not only her, but the other room, and there's a window on that far end. And I wanted to have a sliver of that window showing. I don't need to keep all the detail in the back room. I just don't want it to fall to pure black. So stay right there. Okay, here we go. Line up. And this was something like, I said once again, a 6-second exposure. So it'd be something like this. And we move on then to our next shot. A reflector like this is always easy to have in your car when you travel. And additionally, a reflector like that plus understanding film developer combinations, what a pull can do, and really understanding how different films and developer combinations look, allow you to take a shot like this and make a successful image. Thank you very much for listening. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Now go shoot some film.